Quad 6.6. Alright, doing a little progress check here. This is the quad that you've been seeing that HD footage, the HDZero footage from. This is a 3-inch build, so it's a Warpig 122 frame. It's a 3mm frame, and it's got this canopy I've been working on, which I'm calling the Zero Cage. And specifically, I've been working on this canopy specifically for HDZero, and so fully optimized for everything to build up and be super compact and tight and work with the HDZero system, particularly this is the Whoop Lite VTX, and then this is the Nano Lite camera. As I was kind of working on this stuff, I was thinking, well, maybe it might make sense to actually make this this cage just a little bit more versatile. And so you can see back in here, there's an extra set of little mounting holes. And so what I thought is, well, if you wanted to do analog builds, maybe you'd be interested in using the Ant camera. So this is the Ant Lite, and you can see how I got that second mounting point in there for the Ant Lite camera. But after flying this for a little bit, and I do like this camera, I like it a lot, but there's definitely more potential from the HDZero system going to the slightly heavier Nano V2 camera. You'll gain about like 2 grams or something along those lines, but you'll get the glass lens and supposedly much better video quality, even though I think this is already very good. This is already definitely superior to analog. And so kind of thinking about who might be buying this, and even for myself, I'm actually kind of curious. I'm going to hold off. I was about ready to release this cage, but I'm going to hold off because I've got one of those V2 cameras on the way, and I'm just going to confirm that that second hold position is going to work with that V2 camera. Once I get that dialed in, I am going to go ahead and release this whole thing, and so they're going to be available as kits on CNC Drone, CNC Madness. So I think that'll be kind of nice. Now, having dealt with this a little bit, so initially I was thinking I'm going to take the Quad 6.6 approach to this and say, well, there's just certain performance like targets I need to hit, and to do that I was really kind of like cutting corners on all the weight is everywhere I could. And so a couple of those places, one of those is using the 3mm bottom plate. That 3mm thickness I really intended for 1S builds, and I was thinking, well, you know, at the end of the day I want you to fly a quad that performs really well, but having done a little testing and split S-ing into the side of the house, and I did hit it pretty hard, and it's a straight slam into some stucco, and so I don't think it's totally fair to say, well, the frame's just way too weak. But after having rebuilt this, I'm like, you know, this build it's a little bit more tedious. Because I wanted to stay with the Warpig platform and kind of make it a very like a versatile platform where you could do the zero cage on it, or you could do the regular, you know, build it up toothpick style, or use my TPU canopy designs. This doesn't build quite as easy as I would like it to, and then it just kind of got me thinking of like just a little reality check of like, well, if we're going to put this much effort into it and this much cost into like a VTX and everything, should we really limit ourselves to that 3mm frame? And part of that too is the cost too. Once you kick it up to 4mm, it does get pricier. And also I've been cutting corners in weight in terms of using all nylon hardware everywhere. And I think at the end of the day, that's probably how I'm going to fly it. But I don't know if that's how a lot of other people are going to fly it. And so one of the other things I did is do a second version of this just so that we could also use it for a 4mm thick frame. And I think for people who want slightly better quality of life and better crash resistance, probably the thing to do is go to the 4mm frame. In terms of where we're at right now, let's get this on here. Let's get that teared up. So in terms of the weight, where we sit right now, let me make sure that's not touching anything. So the dry weight on this build, you can see 65 grams. And the battery I'm recommending you fly this on, if I can find it, is something along the lines of like, this is the GNB 550 100C, so this is the red label cell. And this is the equivalent, I think these are the same cells that they used to label as the 520s. But with this, and this is two-cell, because the motors that I have on there are the 1204 8000 kV GEP RC, or not GEP RC, RCN power motors. And so with that 8000 kV, you only need 2S. And so with the battery, the all-up weight, you can see there, see if I can focus, that was 90, basically just under 95 grams. I just take my word for it. Just under 95 grams, which it's, I think you have a little bit of room where you can go slightly heavier and it's not going to be terrible. For my type of flying in a very small space, I am pushing kind of the weight limit where I want to be at. It is taking me just a minute to get a little bit more comfortable flying this in tight spaces, but now I am. I can fly it in my backyard and I feel pretty happy with it. Now I do need to do a bunch of back-to-back stuff and compare it to the analog and see what I like better in terms of, obviously much better video versus on the analog, a little lighter, a little nimbler, things like that. One of the things I've also done is, you can see here now there's a double clip to kind of lock this in. This thing is really solid in terms of rigid. There is no jello possibility whatsoever. And I've actually seen it in my black box logs. I think this frame actually likes having this extra bracing from the canopy, because I think it actually looks a little cleaner than I was expecting. And I think that's partially just because this is so solid in here that any vibration coming into it's got to really work to shake the stuff in there. In terms of not skimping on weight, one of the things I have done is the screws that I'm mounting, because I've got a double stack now. The screws I'm using here are steel screws. So that's the one place where I'm like, okay, well, that's definitely just a place to throw some steel screws in there. But anyways, it's going well, and I was planning on having out this release this weekend, but I think it's worthwhile. Let's make sure that this is compatible with the glass lens camera, because I think people are going to be interested in that as well. The other thing is, I think what I'm really going to do too is do a 3.5 inch build to really take advantage of the HD3 system and probably use that 90 camera, which people seem to like. I think that's what I have for updates on the HDZero build for now. The other thing I'm working on is this little quad right here. So a couple of things on this quad. One is, I should have probably showed you the board before I built it all up, but I was kind of excited to get it built up. This is the new BetaFPV board, and it's pretty standard, this kind of cross shape F411 board, so nothing special there. And I was about to say, I think I've said this before in videos, I'm like, don't buy F411s anymore because Betaflight's just not going to fit on them. But lo and behold, Betaflight did something really forward thinking, I think that I like a lot, is on 4.4 there's going to be cloud builds. And so all that stuff that you don't need, that you can't fit on F411, you're just going to be able to leave it out. So I think that's how it's going to work out anyways. But basically, like, if you don't need all the GPS features and things like that, you just leave it out. And so these F411 boards, I don't think you have to get rid of them just this second. I do still think if you can get an F405, I'd still get an F405 because you get faster processing speed. But F411s aren't dead yet, so that's nice. So the reason I got this board, even though I swore off BetaFPV, is because they put too many things on here that I wanted. One of those is that they put a black box on there, and it's actually, looking at the pin now, I can't, it's actually on this side, I've got it buried in there, but the black box chip it's actually pretty big. And so I kind of understand why when I was having some conversation with TuneRC that they were like maybe a little hesitant to try and fit, or skeptical that they could fit black box on their 1S dedicated board, which I believe they are working on. But I hope they can kind of like come back to that, because BetaFPV's done it, and they've done it with Express LRS, and the Express LRS is built in through UART rather than SPI. So that kind of ticks all the boxes, because one of the problems with running Express LRS through SPI is you're gonna take up too much processing power from your little F411. Now that you've got it on UART, that's not an issue, and so that's one more reason that this starts checking the boxes where this flight controller is actually worthwhile buying for me. It does have the BMI 270 gyro. That's a good gyro, but it is not quite an MPU 6000. Unfortunately, MPU 6000s are kind of unobtainium at this point in time, and so, you know, all right, let's work with what we got, and that's the BMI 270. One of the issues with the BMI 270, I'll go through some logs, is I was not able to match the performance, the prop wash performance of the BMI 270. So for example, I was using on this, this is a TuneRC board down here, this is the Poly. On other builds, when I had kind of twin builds built up between the TuneRC board and then a Flywoo board with the MPU 6000. So BMI 270 versus MPU 6000, everything else the same. I was not able to match the prop wash handling with the BMI 270 board. And so as it turns out, probably what's happening with the boards is that the built-in filtering that the BMI 270 has is probably not what we want for the little micro quads. The BMI 270 has a, I forget if it's like a biquad or something, it's a higher order filter. So basically, when the filtering comes in, instead of like bringing the noise down gently, it like cuts hard. And so one of the things I noticed on the BMI is that they're clean down low, but they're overly clean at high frequencies. So at low frequencies, that's where it's most important for our quads in terms of like not having noise that we can't filter out. And the BMI 270 does great there. The problem is the inboard filters, the built-in filters, they cut too hard, and it's overly clean at high frequencies, which means that you're basically wasting latency. Like you just don't need it, and so you end up with more latency than you need. And I think that's why the BMI 270 is, in addition to being at 3.2K versus 8K, 4K, or 8K, 8K on the MPU 6000, it's just not quite able to keep up on the prop wash side. On some quads, like this one right here, doesn't matter at all. I'm not getting this flies, like I wouldn't worry about it here. On this quad with the bigger tri-blades and stuff, tri-blades are always a little more prop wash. I wish this had slightly better prop wash handling, but it's not bad. Oh, I did tune this. This tuned up really easy. So I've got the tune there. Stuff's ready to go. I just need to get that camera so I can finalize it, and we'll get this released. But anyway, so I was really excited because with this BetaFPV board, now I've got black box built in, and finally I can take logs without adding a ton of weight. So these quads are so small that when you add an open logger on it, that changes the weight, and I don't think you're going to get as accurate as a tune, because the weight is really just not where it should be compared to what you're flying. And so I'm excited about this to be able to get some tunes at actual flying weight, which is really nice. What's interesting to me about this quad is I've been flying on a couple batteries. Oh, the other thing on this quad, this is new to me. These are the Happymodel 0702s. These are the high KV, 26,000 KV, and I'm flying it with these GemFan bi-blade props. I was really interested in trying these motors because 802s on the 65mm prop, I have a hard time with the power band. It sort of like cuts at the bottom, and I feel like the motors just kind of blow through the props. And I really liked these 0703 Nuvidrone motors, but I really liked the power band on them, but they weren't efficient, and they're also underpowered at 16,000 kV. Now on the 0702, this is still not an efficient quad, so I've been flying it with two different batteries. been flying it on both nitro nectars, the 300 and 250s. The 300s, I'm maybe getting up to 3 minutes-ish, maybe. And then on the 250s, it's more like 2 minutes. So pretty short flight, but I really, really like the way it flies, especially with the 250. What's kind of interesting about that is, to me, it actually feels quite different between the 300 and the 250, even though it's only a gram difference. So I think I've got some work to do here with, so my dry weight build on this quad, I think it's not quite where people are getting their 0702 build. So this is 19.3 grams. And when I do the 250, which I like this weight here, I think the quad flies great at this weight. 26, it's just the flight time's too short. 26 grams. And you can see when I do the 300, it's really a tiny little difference. It's only 27.4 grams. So what I think I can do is, I think with doing a little trimming, I've got a little extra battery wire I don't need here. I threw on the Goober canopy. I really like the way they look, but I'm going to go and print out something, and I think I can drop basically like half a gram, 0.75 gram off the canopy, and I think between those two things, I'm going to be coming in at that same weight, you know, as I am with the 250 with the 300 battery. And so if I can get this capacity at that weight that I like, this might be a really, really fun quad to fly. Versus quick impressions versus the 75mm build, this quad flies great. I just sort of need to be a little bit more in practice to fly the 75mm quad. Because the 75mm quad, it handles great and everything, but like once you bump something, it's got enough mass to where it's kind of like shooting off a little bit. It's also a little bit louder. Versus the 65mm quad, it's just a little bit more relaxing. I don't have to quite be as on point with this quad. And I'm not a huge whoop flyer. I'm not flying these day in, day out. And so for me, I think for that quad that I just want to pull off the shelf and fly it once in a while when I want to fly a whoop, I think this is it. I just got to get the weight down a little bit. So those are some of the things I'm going to be working on. We'll soon get this HDZero canopy finalized and in a 4mm. I'm also going to try it on 2.5-inch props, so I'll have to do that. And then also get you some nice tunes with some 0702s on 65mm builds. All right, until next time, cheers.